Hey everybody, welcome to Hills and Gills. If you're new to the channel, my name is Chuck. I want to thank everybody for stopping by and checking out our videos, subscribing. We're growing each and every day, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And guys, we've been doing a series on some of our favorite patterns, whether it's brim, crappie, all the way up to soon to be those big muskies and stripers. We're getting the jigs ready for that. We're going to be bringing some fly tying to the channel, and we got a link right down in the description of some of our favorite ties so far in a playlist. How to remove collars off of jig heads, simple, easy way. Plus, how we pour jig heads and a little painting in there and stuff. A lot of good stuff down there, so I hope you check that out after this video. But we got a little 1 16th ounce jig that we're going to be tying up here. It is super simple to tie, but super effective. This is a nice little jig that we're going to be throwing for crappie. If you live around where there's small streams and creek and like taking light tackle out and fishing those, this is a killer little pattern for that as well. So let's get this bad boy tied up here. Okay guys, the first thing before we get started on this little jig head here, I added some LA colors. This is a 412 black on this, and then I used Loctite super glue to add my eyes, and then you can hit it with either UV resin. I used a hard clear type. This is what I use right here. Take it out in the sun, let it cure, matter of seconds, or you can hit it with a UV light, or you can use good old Sally Hansen hard as nails on these little jig heads right here, and to protect that fingernail polish. Now the first thing that we're going to be doing here is adding our thread. I like going with a red on this setup right here. And this is a do it. This is an A. This is one of my favorite threads when tying jigs. And we go back till we hear the click of the tip of that hook, and we back up about a quarter of the way back up. Now the first thing that we're going to be adding on this is we're going to be adding a chartreuse hackle feathers. Anybody that's watched any of my videos in the past, if you don't want to use hackle feathers as a tail, you can always go with a grub or a little curly tail like I call them, but I like my hackle feathers. Never have to worry about putting a grub on. It's ready to go when I pull it out of the box. So I'm going to go down about an inch on this little feather right here or so, and I'm going to do just like when you're cutting hackle feathers to make like a Popeye jig. And then I'm just going to clip that tail piece off, laying this to the side. And this is pretty much what you got right here. That's going to be the tail of this jig. I'm just going to lay it flat down up on top of that shank right there. I want it to come off about an inch off of this tie right here. I'm going to give him a couple of loose wraps in case I need to adjust him. That looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to tighten him up. Give him some tight wraps. Lift that tail up a little. And just tying this in right here real good. That looks really good right there. Then we're going to move back up. And we're going to come up a quarter of a way from the end of the jig head right here. At the back of the jig head, you want that thread to come up about a quarter of a way. Now, what we're going to be using is we're going to be using some fox fur. Absolutely love this on smaller top jigs. It's just got an excellent action in the water, and you can get a giant sheet of it at Hobby Lobby for like $5, and you can tie a ton of jigs out of this stuff right here. Really nice synthetic hair instead of using like the traditional bucktail. Now what I usually do is just pinch me up some of it, and we'll just go ahead and get it cut. Now when I want to get this cut, I'll just size it up, separate it and everything, clean it up for the tie when I want to get it all cut and stuff. And I don't want it to come back past my hackle feather here. So I just need a little bit of this on. This is a small jig. This is like a 1 16th ounce. So we don't need a lot, about right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this big end off here. Trim him up. Just like so. And then we're going to place it right there and leaving space. Just a small space between the back of the jig head and the fox fur that we're putting down. So we're going to go ahead and get this tied in here. Give him a couple of loose wraps. And a couple of tight ones, just like it right there. And at this point, I want to push forward a little bit and push down. I want this to go over the shank of that hook. So I'm just going to work him around, push him forward a little bit, making sure it's not bumping up against that jig head, and pushing down, just like so. Now, when I want to get that done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie this in with some nice tight wraps and build up back behind the jig head to match where I got this fox spur tied in right here. So the next thing we want to add is our hackle feather. So I'm going to go right down to where it's kind of soft, get off the bigger part of the stem right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and take my scissors and I'm just going to cut and remove that end right there, clean it up a little bit, and then I'm going to pull some of these feathers off, exposing that stem right there. It's still a little bit too long. I'm just going to cut this down just a little bit here, just like so. And then we're going to tie it in right on that collar, on the side of that collar there. So I'm just going to press him right up against that collar, and I'm just going to give him some tight wraps around him right there, locking him in, tying all of that stem in, just like so. If we get a little stray feather there, that doesn't mean nothing. We'll just go ahead and clip him off. That looks good there. Then we're going to pull our hackle back, and we're going to bring our thread back up to behind the jig head. Now, all we're going to do now is we're just going to flare this out here, and we're just going to wrap it. Some nice tight wraps right around the base of that jig head right there. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to take our thread, give some tight wraps back, and come right back up to the back of that jig head. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut the tail end of this hackle off right here. And we're going to just dispose of that. Now at this point, we want to grab all these feathers right here that we spun out, and we want to lay them backwards. So we're just going to keep working them around in our fingers, get them laid back. And if we have any strays, that's no big deal. You can always cut those off when you get done. Now we're just going to start working down that hackle feather with nice tight wraps. And after a few wraps, I'm going to look at him there, see where I've got him. I don't want him to lay all the way back. I want this to have action to it in the water. So that looks pretty good right there. And now I'm just going to go ahead and build my collar up here. Some nice tight wraps, locking that collar in. That looks good. Now we're just going to go ahead and give this thing 5 turns with a whip finish. There we go. 4 or 5 turns be good. Lock that in. Then we're going to go ahead and get our thread cut here right up against that collar. And now the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of super glue to this. You can use Sally Hansen's if you want to. That's fine. I like using Loctite super glue. That's what I use on most 90% of my collars. And then I just work this around, all around, locking all of that thread in. And it's not going to go anywhere. You'll lose this jig before this comes apart. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Guys, if you like it, I hope you give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you're not a subscriber. Much more coming down the line. Also, follow us over on Facebook, Instagram. And guys, we'll see you right here in the next. And stay safe out there in the water. And have a great day.